Hello, I'm Michael Rushton with the Center for Cultural Affairs at the O'Neill School of Public and Environmental Affairs at Indiana University in Bloomington, and I'm here to speak to our digest, and I'm going to be talking about an article from the Journal of Cultural Economics from the third issue of 2019 by Pascal Courty of the University of Victoria. And his article is titled "Ticket Resale, Bots and the Fair Price Ticketing Curse." And so what is this about? Well, we're all familiar with the question of ticket sales in secondary markets. So think of StubHub and agencies like that, or people who privately sell tickets they've acquired to an event, whether an arts event or a sporting event, and they want to resell them into a secondary market. This is a really tricky issue because it combines two things. There is sort of a basic economic question of how do we efficiently allocate tickets to the people who value them most. We want to make sure that people who are going to a concert, who are going to a sporting event, are the people who actually were willing to pay the most to get there. But there's also a real fairness issue. And we often see stories in newspapers and so on about people who get very upset because there are those who attempt to try to get tickets for events that they know are going to be sold out with no intention of ever intending. In fact, they're only buying the tickets so that they can resell them at a profit, perhaps a really high profit later on. And often people will use sort of stealthy technology bots to try to buy up hundreds of tickets so that, even though they're not really supposed to, so that they can get a huge profit. So it's an ethical issue, an emotional issue, as well as an economics issue. And so Pascal Courty is writing about this, and this is an article he has frequently written about in the past. So what do we want to do? Well, his concern is not for events where essentially the primary ticket seller doesn't really care what happens. So often for sporting events, for example, tickets are often priced fairly high to begin with. People acquire tickets, try to resell them, but in general, often teams just don't really care. It's none of their business whether tickets are selling at a high markup or in fact at a loss or anything like that. Courty is concerned with a different kind of event, and this is one where the primary seller wants to keep the price low, perhaps even free, and they want to make sure it stays there even though that very low price is going to mean excess demand. More people are going to want tickets than the venue can hold. So just to give a couple of examples, a university campus might be having a visiting speaker come, somebody very prominent in politics or the arts. They want to make the event free to students, so they tell students, okay, this is free, but you have to get a ticket. But because it's going to be sold out, some people might try to get tickets purely so that they can resell them, knowing that there will be a resale market. Perhaps you have an artist who could command a really high ticket price, but they don't want to. They want to keep it accessible to their true fans. And so they try to keep prices low, even though that's going to really result in excess demand. So that's the kind of case that Courty is interested in. And that's what he calls fair price ticketing. That's what he's interested in. So what are the options here? Well, first thing to note is, in general, we want to allow some kind of ticket resale because sometimes people acquire tickets to something where they genuinely intended on going, and then events happen, some family matter or work matter, where they just can't. They can't make it, and so they're holding on to these tickets, and they'd like to be able to resell them, get them to someone else. It's also the case with these events that you have people who didn't get a ticket initially, they were too slow or didn't hear about the event, but actually would really like to go. And they'd like to have access to, is there a place they can go to try and get tickets and see if anybody is reselling them. So we want to allow some kind of exchange, right? We don't want to ban it altogether. And so Courty considers three different options for how we're going to deal with this. One is simply allow for a free-for-all so that there is unlimited exchange of tickets. And he points out in the fair price ticketing world, As we've already seen, this can lead to problems. You will get people trying to acquire tickets purely so that they can resell them for a profit. Well, that's bad because it undermines what the primary seller is trying to do. People really perceive it as unfair. That's bad. We are worse off if we think we live in we live in an unfair, unethical system, and we'd like to change that. And you also get the waste of what economists call rent seeking. You get a lot of people putting effort into designing bots, trying to acquire these tickets purely for resale. It's not really a socially productive activity. It's not like they're producing a valuable good or service. They're simply trying to exploit the system. So there's a lot of problems that arise with simply unrestricted, do what you will, laissez-faire ticket resale. But as I said earlier, you also don't want to ban resale entirely because sometimes people legitimately do want to resell their tickets when they thought they could go, and people legitimately do want to acquire tickets. So what's his proposal? His proposal is an in-between, and he calls it a centralized exchange. And here would be the deal with this. If you have a ticket and to an event and it's sold out and you find you can't go, you can return it to a single licensed centralized exchange. Okay, and there's only one. It's not a big market, just one place. You return your tickets there and they will give you a refund. They might only give you a partial refund because there are administrative costs, and so the original ticket buyer might bear some burden. But essentially, you give your tickets back to that centralized exchange and they will take them and give you a partial refund. The second step is that people who want tickets for this event who didn't originally get them register their names with this centralized exchange, and tickets are randomly allocated to those fans. So suppose an event sells out, and suppose over time 50 tickets come available from people who had bought them but can't go. Lots of people register to get one of these tickets in the centralized exchange. 50 people will randomly be chosen out of that pool to have a chance to buy a ticket, and they'll have to pay for it, okay? The good thing about the randomness there is you don't get people rushing and fighting each other to be the first on the list, okay? You just simply register your name and you might get lucky. The legitimate ticket owner is always registered. So this is important. When you first bought a ticket, your name is taken. If you keep your ticket and you go to the event, you will have to show ID. You'll have to show, yes, I'm the legitimate owner of this. If you bought a ticket from that centralized exchange, the centralized exchange registers your name. You become the official ticket owner, and you have to show ID at the admission. This is a good system because it keeps everything within that centralized exchange. It prevents ticket sales from going outside it and anybody trying to take advantage of that. So what are all the good things about this? It allows for legitimate ticket exchange. That's a good thing. We wanted that. There's no gain in trying to acquire tickets for a profit because you can't earn a profit from this. There's no gain in always trying to be first in line because reallocated tickets will be done on a random basis. And the legitimate ticket owner is registered, which means there's no fake tickets, there's no bogus tickets, and no people being taken advantage of that way. So in the paper, I won't go into the technical details, but he outlines all of the conditions where this is optimal. Really interesting paper. This is a huge topic. It's not going to go away. I highly recommend you read it.